You want to speed test an SSD? Of course you do. Come on. Sorry for that ultra quick intro, but this is of course Techsperiments, basically where I do quick investigations into hardware, try not to be long-winded at all, although no one probably will end up as that. So basically yes, we have an SSD in front of me here. Recently, well I say recently, this was bought for a Apple PowerBook, and the intention was to basically upgrade it. But I wanted to see how fast it is, but also this SSD might be hiding something. As some of you might have noticed from the label, you can see that it says PATA. Now that means, yep, of course, it's an IDE or parallel ATA based drive. So it isn't readable in the normal sense, but I kind of feel like they may not be telling us something. For this isn't just any SSD, it's actually an mSATA inside of a converter enclosure. In a way it's kind of cheap, but I can probably see what they were going for. It had been my intention just to get an IDE based SSD to make it kind of simple, so I could then try out this method later. But it looks like I got this one anyway. So what is it? It's a very generic looking drive. There's no identification on as far as I can see. I looked at this before once, and I think it's just basically whatever they had in their place to make this thing up. And this is a pretty simple enclosure. I mean, I've seen these everywhere. It's just basically had a label put on. Fashion Sprout apparently. No idea what brand that is. So I think we need to take this off and try and measure it. But how do we do that? Indeed, how are we going to do this whole thing? Let me show you. For this task today, we're going to use the SSD, a SATA to mSATA enclosure I bought earlier, and my 2.5 to 3.5 enclosure that I've had for quite a while. Oh, and this handy little screwdriver. Let's do it. And that's done. I know it's kind of obvious, but I just realised how ridiculous this is, kind of thing. It's basically an mSATA SSD inside a converter, inside another converter, which will then go inside the PC. Well, I think we should just get on with that now. And Lord have mercy, it's appeared inside of disk management. Let's make a new simple volume. Yay, we have a new volume. Alright, let's test this out. I'm going to use Crystal Disk Mark, typical thing, and we'll see how quick it is. Apparently this drive is a BR128G. Doesn't really tell us a lot, other than it's 128 gigabytes. So off the bat, we're already getting pretty good speeds. 559 on read, that's pretty impressive. Let's just see what the rest of it does. Okay, well that's done. That isn't bad. I mean, it has a great read speed. It's almost 560 megabytes a second. A little bit down on the writes, but you might expect that for a 128 gigabyte SSD. Other parts of it are looking pretty good as well. That is of particular note. Let's compare it to some other SSDs I've done. On the right we have our new SSD, and on the left we have a SanDisk SSD Plus that I tested earlier. As you can see, it is better in a lot of areas. And this is a SanDisk. This isn't just some kind of cheapy thing off the internet like the one on the right. So I'm actually quite amazed at that. I think I'll capture these results and just keep them for posterity. But now, that is the experiment done. So in conclusion, how fast are cheap SSDs from eBay? Apparently, very fast. This thing would do great inside of the IDE implementation, or even in a SATA 2 based system. It's going to rock that transfer rate. But anyway, I'm going to get out of here now. That's the Techsperiments episode done. So if you like what you saw, like and subscribe, do all that good stuff. If you don't want to, that's fine too, I don't mind. So leave a comment if you want also, and I'll be back with more episodes later on. Just a quick addendum to this video. I know it's been done for weeks. It was actually meant to be done and filmed and like dusted on the 19th of November, which is when the video was actually compiled. I just haven't uploaded it yet. But I found since there's actually some issues with, you know, these SSDs. Now, I just want a disclaimer in case it wasn't before. I'm not saying because of my experiments, oh, all cheap SSDs are fast. This was just an experiment on a cheap SSD I got from eBay. But it's not all true. Now, a lot of SSDs that you get that are cheap, they kind of use some tricks to try and get as fast. So I'm just going to demonstrate. I've got one of my files here, which is a pretty hefty 2.43 gigabyte. I'm just going to copy this to the drive. Just open another window for you. This is the SSD, which is now not in use in previous sort of situation. And we're just going to copy that, and I'm going to show you what happens. Okay, so here we go. This is going to start off the transfer of about 30 gigs of ISO images to the SSD. Just zoom you in a little bit. So it's all going fine. You get about 157 megabytes a second. It's down on the actual throughput of this drive, but just watch it. And there we go. There's where it starts to hit its sort of average, which it's bobbing about now, but it'll calm down, there we go, about 50 odd to 60 megabytes a second. And that's basically the way it continues right until the end of the transfer. And there you go. So yeah, there's a few things I learned from this whole thing, so I think we just need to move on to the conclusion a bit quick. So yeah, what you're witnessing there is basically cheaper SSDs, and it's been documented for such as like the 850 and SanDisk drives. They tend to use a small section of really fast kind of NAND, and then there's the regular NAND which is slower, which when it copies to the other bit, first the faster part, it then copies in its own time to the slower SSD NAND. Sometimes as well, they don't even have that. They have basically the DRAM. They actually do have a piece of RAM on the board. I think these days it's either DDR2 or DDR3, and it writes to that and then writes to the NAND. So often it's done a lot quicker than that, but that's basically what happens. And so that's the caveat. So I have learned something myself in this, and so hopefully the first part of the video isn't too useless. But again, until next time, bye bye. I could be saying anything right now. I could even be swearing. But you'd never know, because I have muted this while I sped it up. Imagine all the things I could be saying about various people. Like, for example, Donald Trump is a and he's probably going to run America into the ground. But yeah, we all know that. Anyway.